Welcome everybody to Lunch and Learn. I hope you please feel free to continue eating as we're going along, as we would be doing if we were gathered together in one place in person. I want to introduce to you Reverend Gini Norris-Lane, who's the Executive Director of UKIRK, Collegiate Ministries Association. And her keynote for us today is who, what, when, where, why, how, helping your church engage young adults full of questions themselves. And Gini, I don't know if folks will have questions for you about what UKIRK is, but you may want to entertain some of those as well, because I'm not sure everybody will know what that is. But welcome, we're glad to have you, and thank you for joining us.
Great, thank you. Just so to give you all the brief little commercial about UKIRK, in 2010, the General Assembly received an overture to create an Office of Collegiate Ministries because that, if any of you remember all the way back then, in 2007, when Bob Turner, who had been there, retired, they dispersed all of the young adult and college ministries to different offices. And there were some really great things that were happening, but as you all know, if there's not one central place to kind of coordinate, it was a little disjointed. So the overture passed. In 2011, there was a task force or committee, because we Presbyterians love that, on collegiate ministry. And one of the things they said is that there needs to be one central name to unite all of the Presbyterian collegiate ministries across the nation. And so how many of you have ever heard of a Presbyterian campus ministry? Raise your hand or wave. Or a Westminster Fellowship, or a Celtic Cross, or any other kind of strange name like the Table or the Well, or come and be with us because we'll feed you free food. So what the task force did was they said, let's create a name that has deep roots back in our heritage as Presbyterians, and that honors the fact that these congregations, these faith communities, are engaged beyond the congregational structure quite often. And so UKIRK, which means University Church, was created. So Kirk being a connection to our Scottish heritage. In 2019, the Office of Christian Formation, and I don't think that Miata is still here, but Jason Santos, who was there, said, you know what, let's discern a new way forward with our age and stage ministries. So how many of you are members of APSE? So I've been a member for longer than I care to admit I'm live. And Presbyterian Youth Workers Association, and Older Adult Ministry, and the Presbyterian Camp and Conference Association, so PCCA. So UKIRK at that point was the only one that was still quote unquote in-house in the Presbyterian Mission Agency. And Jason and those in theology, formation, and evangelism said, why don't we try a new way of partnership? And so in 2019, UKIRK became our own 501c3 independent organization in covenant relationship with the Presbyterian Mission Agency Office of Christian Formation. That is very, very, very long way to say that. So we say we are a part of the collective, which if any of you know Stephanie Fritz and Miata, we tease them that sounds like a version of the mafia. We're part of the collective, you know. And along with our sister organizations, APSI and PYWA, PCCCA, and POAM, we, UKIRK, partner with PMA, as well as presbyteries across the nation, as well as collegiate ministries across the nation, as well as with New Worshiping Communities 1001 and all the other parts of the denomination, to strengthen and equip and support and resource our 200 plus collegiate ministries. And one of the things that I'm so thrilled to be here with you all today about is that in 2001, during the last sort of official church study and commitment, there was a document created called Renewing the Commitment. There were 700 campus ministers and chaplains in the network, and there were about 1,500 congregations that did collegiate ministry. And right now, we officially have just over 200 in 20 years. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Collegiate ministry is hard to sustain. It is a revolving door. It is a changing demographic. It's a changing generation. The world has changed in 20 years. But I am excited to be here so that we can all learn together. So for some reason, this is not allowing me to share my screen. It says that there's something about the security.
Hold on, Ginny. For some reason, it stopped you from being. It says remove co-host. You should be a co-host. You're a co-host.
And
I'm going to make you the host. Oh, but then I can't record.
Well, I can hit record if it stops recording.
Okay, go ahead. You are now the host, so you should not have any restrictions.
Okay, well, and it may be my end, but I love the fact that this is what happens when your computer updates and it doesn't allow you to get back into the thing. So Cheryl, what I'm going to do, because we have amazing technology, is I'm going to make you the host.
Okay.
And I'm going to send you the PowerPoint and you can share it with you. I apologize, everybody. I made sure all of the things were done, but I did not think about these. This has never happened before. The wonders of technology.
The joyful thing, isn't it? Okay, let me get my mail. Are you sending it by email?
I am. And it should be there.
I am waiting for it.
Okay, so we are going to adapt for just a second. And so what I want to know, and this is when you get to turn off your mute, is why do you think, with all of the things that are going on with the church and all the demands that the church has right now, why do you think congregations and churches, and the Presbyterian Church in particular, should be engaged in inviting and investing in young adult ministry? Just shout out your answers, or I will call on you, the old teacher in me.
So I would say that, like, one of the biggest times that youth leave the church is in college, when they're detached from their youth group or their home churches. I've read something about 80% of our students are lost at that time. So with that being said, UCF is a large university. Are you guys expanding, or are you thinking about moving throughout the state? I noticed there's a couple of colleges that are involved in your group.
Mhm. The answer is yes. And the way that we do that through our connectional system is through all of you, but also through presbyteries and through congregations that partner together. There are some congregations that there are different models. And so we have presbyteries that have started presbytery-wide collegiate ministry at places like UCF, which has 72,000 students, which just, my first introduction to UCF, I went to Baylor, was when UCF completely obliterated Baylor in a bowl game a long time ago. And my husband and I said, we didn't even know UCF existed. And we looked it up, 72,000 people. I was like, okay. Through presbyteries, through congregations, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. Okay, so why else?
The age-old line, they are our future.
Right, Thomas, they are our future. And so we as the church can be a little bit like young adults at a bar on a Saturday night. We can be a little desperate to try to, get them. But at the same time, they are absolutely God's beloved. And the church is called to continue, I think. Why else?
Congregations are aging.
Mm-hmm. And so, Erica, go ahead.
They're at a pivotal time in their lives. And so encouraging them to stick with the faith through all of the transitions of life, I believe, is important.
Absolutely. And so what I want you all to do is I want you to take a piece of paper, and I don't know if you can see this, but make a grid of 6 squares. Because one of the things that Cheryl said to me was this needs to be practical. And so what I hope at the end of our time together is that we will be able to each of you have a blueprint of how God may be stirring in your heart to think about this. And so in the top left one, I want you can see my really bad thing. I want you to write the question, why? In addition to all of the other things that you have said, a couple of things I want to add. One, because as congregations, we have made baptismal vows to support students throughout their faith journey. And part of their faith journey in today's mobile and virtual world continues after they leave your congregation as an 18 or 20 or a 22 or a 24 or a 30-year-old person. And so baptismal vows. The second is because it's a mission. If you think about all of the wonderful mission that all of our congregations do, we go and invest in Matthew 25 initiatives, right? To address the root causes of poverty, to dismantle systemic racism, to make church vitality a key component of who we are. College campuses, and I'm going to use UCF as the largest opportunity, 72,000 students. And one of the things about UCF is that I looked at the statistics, and it is amazing that 27.5% of their student population is Latinx. 10% of their population is African American. 6.4% is Asian. 3.9% international. And then we have Asian and Pacific Islander. We have multiracial. It's a mission field. And one of the things we know about our students is that a significant number of students that go to college today, they are able to get a Pell Grant. And what a Pell Grant means is that they live under a certain wage, and that some of them, many of them are probably live under the poverty level, or even 25% above the poverty level. And so on a college campus, yes, there are young adults, but this is an intersection of all of the things that are happening in the larger society. And the third reason that I would say for the why is because our world needs a witness, regardless of whether people respond, of what a life-giving Christian faith can look like. We have a lot of students that come to UKIRK that will say, I was told that I couldn't be a part of church because I was discerning my sexual orientation. I was told that as a woman, I can't serve because God doesn't want women serving. I was brought up in a household that didn't introduce me to faith at all, but I care about justice. And all I see about the Christian church is people that are against everything. I see in our larger culture that Christian faith often means connection with, for some of them, white supremacy. Christian faith often means connection with one particular political persuasion. And part of what Jesse Light Wells, who is the UKIRK SMU at Southern Methodist University, the UKIRK leader there, she said is our students are craving and demanding a faith in which we do justice and love kindness and are welcoming to all and not manipulative. And so one of the things that I learned in my 14 years of collegiate ministry is the power of the witness to plant seeds that will shape how people understand who we as Christ followers are. And so now we're going to go to the who. And so you can decide to go next to or below. You can, I know all of us do things a little bit differently.
Ginny, do you need your PowerPoint up yet, or are you?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, because I do have it, and within
Great.
a time block.
Oh, good. Because we are going to.
Buddy, got it? Are you seeing it?
Yeah, and so go to the next slide, Cheryl, after you start.
Okay.
And see if that hyperlink works for you.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get myself a little bit. Identified a potential security problem, but we're going to risk it.
This is a full 3 months of food.
So you want me to show it? I'm guessing.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason that we start with why as opposed to who is for this reason, and it should bring up starting at minute 121. And if it doesn't, then you can take us to that.
Okay, because it's like showing an ad right now.
Oh. Y'all don't need to know
That
about
would be
VRBO.
refrigeration or special storage. And we're looking at our. This is called How Do I Know?
121?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see where we, okay, 120.
Director. Yes, sir. All right, so.
Is this where?
Let me get a couple.
Yeah, can you share it on the screen, Cheryl?
Share, expand it?
No, it's not coming up on my screen. So if you can switch.
You have to
on me.
optimize.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to go out and come back in. Okay. Let me see what I can do here.
Educators are nothing if not adaptable. So thank you all for.
Optimize and share sound. Here we go. All right, can you see it at least on the screen? Yes.
Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right, all right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
You ever wondered what
Actresses do when they have to
Oh,
get
hold
taken
on.
fast forward.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay, sorry. Let me
No.
get rid of this.
And so that's, friends, why we start with why. Not only to ground ourselves in what the church needs, but to ground ourselves in our identity. And so if you want to bring up the PowerPoint.
Okay. Are we to, would you like to go to the next? Oh, did I share it? I didn't share it. Hold on. Gotta hit the share screen. Yeah, and I know I've got to bring it up from this.
Yeah.
Sorry. Am I on the right
Yeah.
slide?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Right. And so if you can go to the next one. So on the interchange at that intersection point between why and who, one of the things that we also talk about is what the students need. Why is the church pivotal at this point in time? For those of you who remember Fowler, one of the things that we know happens at this stage, and this is whether students go off to college or not, around 18, is they go from a received faith, if they've been brought up in the church, and they lay it down like an old wineskin, and they then engage in stage 4, which is wrestling to figure out what they're going to put in their backpack to take with them into adulthood. So in this stage 4 faith, there is a lot of pushing back. There's a lot of questions, especially in our world today. There are questions about, is God even relevant with all of the things that are going on? And so we have to start at this stage 4 engagement with what they are going to begin to hold on to. What the church has done for many, many years is that we have said, you know what, we're like the Amish, go off at 18, sow your wild oats, see the world, see what's going on. And then when you get married and have kids, you'll be back because you'll realize kind of through all that this has been important to you all along. What we know, as Ken said earlier, is about 80% of our young adults do not come back. They leave, and either they go nowhere, or they often go to traditions that are more involved and invested on college campuses, many of which, I would say most of which, are not theologically aligned with the PCUSA. So if you can go to the next one. But even more important, the National Alliance on Mental Health, on Mental Illness says that our young adults today are more than any generation before struggling with anxiety and depression, eating disorders, suicidal ideation, and addiction in numbers that are beyond anything that we've ever seen. And what we know happens at this time of life is if they don't have a web of connection and adults in their lives that can provide engagement and sound care, that they are often not only adrift spiritually, but adrift emotionally. And I would even say, if you all haven't done an assessment of your youth program recently, and how many students have a diagnosis, are on anxiety medicine or depression medicine, or who have struggled with some sort of mental health issue, it's astounding. This is in addition to students who are engaging other kinds of mental and emotional challenges, such as ADHD or OCD or some other learning disability. So their internal engagement is in many ways far more complicated than I think any generation that we've seen before. And we've seen all of these statistics go up during the pandemic. And so the last statistic I wrote is that if you look at the top right, 30% of students reported that they had problems with schoolwork due to mental health issues. I read that it's more like 50% dealing with significant anxiety during 2021. So the next slide. But the good news is, because we are good news people, is that they are also asking these questions about identity, belonging, and purpose. And so when we say, why are we called to be engaged? What we know is that because they are asking these questions, they're wanting to know does our Christian faith, does following Jesus have anything to say to me about my vocation? Does it have anything to say to me about what it means to be community, about what it means to belong? One of the things that we began to see shifting about 15 years ago is that it used to be that to be a Christian, you believed first, you professed Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and then you belonged to a congregation or community of faith, and then you began to learn to serve. And so mission engagement, and you took it beyond the congregation. What we know now is that center, where do I fit, belonging, ultimate question is the number one question right now. And so who am I, but also where do I belong, and where can I find support, and what kind of community of faith can I, not only can I be a part of, but who will know me, who will remember me? Okay, the next one. And so who are we talking about? Okay, the next one. So I put 18 to 24 here. And this encompasses a lot: undergraduate students, graduate students, community college students, non-traditional students that are above the age of 24, those who entered the workforce and did not go to college, but also, again, looking at the UCF demographics, it's interesting to me that the average age of their student population is 23.7. And so UCF skews a little bit older for even their undergraduates, but their graduate students' average age is 30.9. And so there is a lot of leeway in this 18 to 24, and there's a lot of diversity within this 18 to 24 year age group. And so the next slide. So what I want you to do in the next 30 seconds, and I'm going to time you, is I want you to write down everybody that you know that falls in this 18 to 24-ish, 30-ish age group, and everybody that you know that has a direct relationship with somebody in that 18 to 24 year age group. So so who do you know? And so we are going to have 30 seconds. Ready, go. That was a fast 30 seconds. Okay, so let's share. Who is somebody that you put down, Helen?
Selfishly, I started with my two sons. So, but I already have a list of 15. So, and these are associated with our church.
Awesome. Okay, what about you, Martin?
I too started out with my son, and I have a list of about 12 kids from the church in that age range.
Awesome. And then one more, Stacy.
I said my neighbors, grandkids. I don't know them all by name. I just know them when I see them. And Jamisha, my goddaughter, and Mrs. Brooks' grandkids. So that's probably about maybe by at least 15.
Right. So it's amazing. How many of you couldn't think of anybody that was kind of in that age group, but you thought of people who had engagement in some ways in that age group, like Stacy did? Just a wave. I'm trying to go through all of our. Okay, so Gloria. And so how many of you put down a faculty or a staff member that you know that works at a community college or university in your geographic region? Okay. So park that in the parking lot in the back of your brain for just a second. And then Cheryl, if we can go on to the next one. Okay. Again, now we're to the what. What are we talking about? So we've got the who. The next slide. So one of the things in this third section of what are we talking about when we talk about young adult engagement or ministry? We are talking about all the normal things of church, right? Bible study, fellowship, service, justice, advocacy, work. I was remiss in not putting worship, but that was in some ways intentional, because we are often not talking about worship at 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. So just make a little note of that. But what we're also talking about is any ministry that your church has in which young adults find themselves invited into engagement. So many churches work with music departments at a college or university to get soloists or give internships. Many of you may have childcare sitters or young adults that are working in some way connected to your church. Many of your congregations and maybe your presbytery offers scholarships to students, whether that is your congregation saying, okay, Austin, which is my son going off to college, so he was first on my list. Okay, Austin, First Presbyterian wants to support you, and so we're going to give you a $500 scholarship for college each semester. But these scholarships can also be in other areas. There's a church in Georgia that gives scholarships for students to do educational internships with their early childhood center, as well as scholarships in their music and their youth program. This is talking about youth that have gone off to college that are connected to your congregation or to your sphere of influence, as well as, and I say youth, it means this transition 17, 18, 19, 20, youth coming to your area. Okay, so there's a lot of what and a lot of who in this intersection of this question. And so it can be a lot of different things. But up at the very, very top, what you'll see in this area is ask, listen, 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 right? One of the things that congregations often do, and I've been guilty of this myself, is we say, hey, we're gonna build it, and if we build it, they'll come. How many of you have ever had a program in which you've built it, you thought this is the greatest thing in the world, and basically you and the 2 volunteers that you had, like, participating were the only ones really that showed up. Okay, thank God some of you raised your hands, because I was like, is that really only me? Is that only here in Texas? So in the what, one of the things that I think is the hardest for churches to figure out is, where do we invest in the what? And so that's where the question is, what do you want? And what do you need? So under the what, you can put want and need. But part of it is listening long enough to figure out what they'll actually show up for. Because I want something, but then when I get busy, so there's a difference between what and need, and then what they'll make time for. Okay, so the next slide. And so I want us for just a couple of minutes to share with one another in your congregation right now, what already exists in your programs and your possibilities. What are things that you, when you saw that list and you began to think about, what's one thing that popped into your mind that you said, oh, well, we already have this, or, oh, we do that, or, I hadn't thought about that, or, oh, we got a whole slew. We got 15 things we do every week. So I think, Danny, you said you record a podcast. So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was just something that my buddy and I started doing for fun, actually. We decided to get some equipment, and we recorded a podcast for our fantasy football league, but then we started to do a Bible study with it as well. And the purpose was not to take ourselves too seriously, but just kind of talk about where our struggles were and where the difficulties were. But it's actually provided a lot of personal growth, almost just like accountability to study that next chapter, for us to talk about it every week. And I joke that nobody listens. That's an exaggeration. We have tens of listeners. But I made that joke earlier today too. But I know that there's 2 or 3 people that have reached out to me that says they find it really useful. So it's like, okay, great. There was a kid who used to be in my youth group who's now in college, who listens every week. So it's like, you know what? If he's getting something out of it, that's great.
Awesome. Okay, so before I call on anybody else, any volunteers of somebody that just thought, oh, I thought of something of what already exists that we're already doing? Okay, Christina, what did you think about?
Just trying to find my mute button there. As to what already exists, like we kind of came into at our church, nothing existed. Ken is on here too. He and I were the youth directors at our church, and we came into like a no college group. And we had we wanted to start one. And that happened and then the pandemic happened. But we actually were surprised to find that it actually worked pretty well in the pandemic setting. Because we weren't focused on meeting in person, which is very difficult with that age group. And so the online format was actually pretty conducive to their schedules. So there really was nothing that existed, and that's what we had to work with.
Right. But what I would say is you now have something that exists.
Yes.
Like right now. And so any relationship that exists, any youth that are connected to your congregation, if any of you post-pandemic hope to go back to choirs and singing. One of the things that's really interesting that tends to be very popular for some young adults are bell choirs. And so, but the other thing that tends to be very popular that people don't often think about is if you have a knitting group and they knit prayer shawls, that has become Pres House, which is probably our largest campus ministry at University of Madison, Wisconsin, $7 million budget every year. They said the most popular thing that they have right now is a knitting group and a makers group, meaning they do kind of handwork. So when you think about what already exists, I want you to begin to kind of map out like all of the things your congregation has, because as Mark Elston in his book, We Aren't Broke says, is we often miss all of the things that exist because we're thinking of all the things that we should be doing. Okay, Cheryl, next slide. So on this win, next. Okay. So one of the things that anybody who works with young adults in ministry knows is that there are touch points throughout the year. And whether or not they are, for our purposes, we're talking about an academic year, but it doesn't have to be an academic year. But so many people are like, oh, well, we missed the beginning of the year, so we'll have to start in the spring. Or, oh, it's been pandemic, so we can't do that. Or, oh, we didn't think about going here, so we'll have to wait a year. The wonderful thing about young adults is that they got a lot of touch points in their lives. And so think about, very similarly to the liturgical year, think about all of the touch points that are happening throughout the academic year. And also with your students and your young adults that are just working, I will say working. Many of them, my son showed me something today that said, from a young adult, I don't do poly work. I have multiple jobs to survive. Don't try to make this a fancy thing that I'm doing, right? So many of our young adults right now have multiple jobs, whether they're in school or not. So think about those times of the year in which their lives are high stress. And think about ways and investment and connection that your congregation can do in any or all of those times. So there's clearly the beginning of the school year. In just a second, I'm going to show you our website, and we have a commissioning and a promises book that you can do and things like that, either in worship or without. But also midterms. Around October, finals, right before Thanksgiving break, over winter break, when they're off of school or they're home working, spring break, in May, finals are often the last week of April and the first week of May, and then the end of the school year. And so much like we already in our congregations have a children's program and a youth program and confirmation, and we look at those touchstones and we have those advancements and promotional Sundays, beginning in May of a year, as you celebrate your youth and what they're going to be doing at this next stage of their lives, ask them to share with you what they're doing. And like, for instance, if there are students going into the military, that's going to be a high stress touch point for your church. Okay, next. Okay, and then rituals throughout the year. And we're going to go on to the next one because this is the money question, literally and figuratively, if we want to go on, Cheryl. Okay. So as I told Ken earlier, there are about as many models for young adult and collegiate ministry as there are 10,000 congregations in the PCUSA. And so I want to kind of start from kind of tweaking to full on kind of brand new ministry. So one of the things, if you kind of look at, say, it's August, let's think about all of our young adults that are transitioning to a different part of their spiritual journey and their life journey. Those going to college, there are two things. And Cheryl, see if that link works on the refer a student. If it doesn't, it looks like it was going to. So I'm going to.
It works. I just will have to stop sharing because I have it.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm going to put it.
I can put it in the chat. If you want.
Oh, yeah, that'd be, yeah, I've got it in the chat.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I can.
No,
stop
you're
it
good.
again.
No, you all are doing an amazing job. So one of the things somebody put in the chat earlier about UKIRK Tallahassee, Matt Freeze is there and is an amazing partner. And so we invite you to think about all of your students that are going off to college and ask their permission first, but connect them with a community at the next stage of their lives. And so if you send this in, if there is not a UKIRK community, what we do is we find a congregation that is near the campus. But also if you have students that are going to, maybe they're moving to Washington, DC, and they're not going to go to school. This is where Cheryl can be really helpful, and the APSI can be really helpful as you think about the network of where is that web of connection and how can you make a personal introduction and say, hey, my friend Bob is in DC and he's going to take you for coffee, or he is going to pick you up from the airport or whatever, because we know that those touch points are really, really important. You will also see youth to college. There are ways, just like in the Olympics, when our relay team won, the way that you hand off the baton really can be important. And so this youth to college quick sheet can really, really help as you think about this time in their lives and how to make that connection. But we also have the students that are going to stay home, or your call to continue the baptismal vows with those who are going off, because we don't just pass them on and then forget about them. Some of the things that congregations have been doing, which have been really, really powerful, are adopt a student programs where you have maybe your shut-ins that say we want to pray for a student. And that's what they commit to do, is they pray for a young adult or a student throughout the semester. And then there's maybe a meal or a Zoom meeting at the end of the semester or a couple of times in the semester to touch base. There's an adopt a student program in which if there are youth and young adults that want to do things like go to the Montreat College Conference, which is January 2nd through 5th, then the congregation with their partners make sure that the student can make it there financially. So those are kind of existing things. But if you want to be on campus, there is a very, very good how to start a UKIRK. And then there's another assessment that we have here that guides you how to get onto a college campus and become what's called an official recognized student organization. And so one of the dual things you have to do is contact a dean of students office and find out what the process is. But you also need to connect with your faculty and staff that already are a part of your congregation, because what generally happens is to get onto UCF campus, you need anywhere from 3 to 10 students that say, yes, I'll sign that I'm a member of this. And then you need a faculty or a staff sponsor. So it does not mean they're not signing their lives in blood, by the way. They often feel like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But using your existing presbytery structure, say to the youth that are graduating, hey, will you do this so we can become an official member, which allows their organization to be on campus as a part of their student activities. But then how do you tend it if you have something on campus? Existing Staff Plus is what a lot of people do. They say, oh, we're just going to add collegiate ministry to your portfolio. And so what that means is you are going to take your 50-hour a week job and you're going to add another 10, 20, 30, 40 hours onto it, and it'll be fine. We'll be able to do great. Unless there is a group of people to really help shepherd that, that is often very, very tough, as you all know. Hey, we're going to take you from being the children's director to being children, youth, and adults. Oh, and families. Oh, and you get to do all of this. But there is some money. We partner with 1001 New Worshiping Communities. And there are some really amazing models in the denomination that intentionally at a presbytery level start a collegiate and young adult worshiping community. There are discernment grants and seed grants of about $7,500 to $10,000 that help offset the cost of discerning a call into this ministry and what it could be. The good news about that seed grant is you don't have to have a clear vision. You just have to have an open heart and a willingness to engage. And then if you go to the next one, there's a good guide on how to start a UKIRK, but on the next slide, there is, will it not let you?
I've gotten myself in a little mess here. Hold on.
Okay, no, that's okay. I've got it right here. I am putting,
here we go.
And what?
Are we seeing it now? You want the link?
Anyway, yeah, so I've got it. Here's the quick sheet, but what I just put in the chat is, okay, so we want to discern if something is going to happen. We want to discern where God is calling us to invest in this. What should we do? So this quick sheet that Cheryl's brought up, so you want to start a UKIRK ministry, is a first step, but the link that I put into the chat is a much more extensive assessment tool and discernment tool that we offer. Because as you know, it's about God's call, but it's also about the charisms of your congregation and of your community of faith. And so if you say, hey, we really want to start this praise team, but you have no one in your ministry that actually plays any instruments or sings, that's probably not where you're called to start.
Can you see this, Jenny? Can you see the assessment tool? Up on this?
Yeah. And so this assessment tool, it's 2 pages. It's the tiniest font ever. And so I encourage you to blow it up. For some reason, when we made it a PDF, it did not like us. But this is a guide for you all to use in your congregation with a session committee at the presbytery level, with a couple of congregations together, with a couple of Presbyterians together, to gather together and to say, okay, God, there's this need, there are these students, this is important. Where's the Holy Spirit working in this? And how can we invite young adults of a lot of different ages and stages to be a part of this discernment, so that what we come up with, A, is meaningful to them, and B, can be sustained. Because that is often the two most important things is consistency and sustainability, because the reason we're down from 1,500 to 200 is because of changing budgets. And there are people having to do more with less. And so in this stage of our lives together as a denomination, we want where we go from here to be something that is life-giving, not only for the young adults connected to our congregation, but for our congregations themselves. And so, Cheryl, that's, if you want to get off, we can have some Q&A. I know we're, I'm so sorry we're off, but if we want to continue, I will be happy to stay in the room as people go off into their meetings, if you have any other questions.
We still have 16 folks on. I have it scheduled till 1:30, so.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, questions.
So when you talk about sustainability and you talked for a moment, and I think that's where you went with the readiness assessment tool. Is there some kind of like virtual option? As Christina stated, we kind of have started a collegiate ministry through our church that is kind of it's a prayer study that's focused on the name of the thing is escaping me right now, but it's current events, and it's centered around topics around the current events. Is there an option that's virtual, that you have students from several college campuses and they come together and you can start this seed group and move forward? Can you talk a little bit about some of the maybe ways that virtually we could do that, or that maybe people have tried to get into UCF that we could help to maybe get into some of the local areas here in Orlando? I noticed that we have one, I believe, that's in our presbytery, the Protestant Campus Ministries, I believe it is, in Melbourne, would fall in our presbytery. That's not
Functioning any longer.
Oh, okay. It was on the website I saw earlier. So, but is there, just other ways that we can help in this area?
Right. So what we have found with virtual ministry, although I have to say, one of the things that we continue to discern ourselves, especially with community college students, which happen to be a very, very, very mobile and commuter population, is one of the things we've been trying to figure out is, are we called to kind of beta test some statewide or region-wide virtual ministries for college students? The reality is those tend to work very well with existing relationships. And so where they have tended to work very well is if you all have any camp and conferences in your presbytery, the staff that come back to work there for the summer, them continuing as a spiritual formation group through the year, that tends to work really well. For some reason, camp and conference staff love each other, and often that's their kind of primary pod. Youth group, any youth group for instance, if all the kids that are going to go to Triennium next year, those that go on to have a Triennium alumni group. Any of the young adults in your congregation that are working, this is where it's been hit or miss, to be really honest. That tends to be harder. Those that are those that are working that have less kind of connections and connective tissue. But one of the things that we're trying to discern as UKIRK is we learned a lot with virtual ministry. It's been really powerful. There is something about getting together. There's something about being able to gather at some point. So with our virtual ministries, what we have seen is Montreat College Conference happens January 2nd through 5th every year. And those students who have been virtual, and virtual it doesn't even have to mean like a Bible study. It can mean I have coffee hours from 2 to 5 every Wednesday, and you drop in, and from 4:30 to 5, I'm going to do a daily prayer and include all of the prayer requests that have been given during that time. It's been interesting how the students have said, oh, I can't come, but I need you to pray for this, and I need you to pray for my roommate, and I need you to pray for my mom, and I need you to pray, right? So there is that kind of open Zoom window of formal and informal. But gathering summer, winter break, maybe even spring break, engaging them in maybe a church-wide mission trip or something like that, those touch points of in-person seem to matter. And even that can be just a dinner. Like, it does not have to be super expensive. But the way that we've referred to it is virtual and. What we have also found is that there is something about being on campus. We have some pastors throughout that have office hours at a coffee house on campus. And they don't have a recognized student organization. They literally put up a little plaque that says the pastor is in, and then they put on Instagram, and they tag every youth that they have ever known, and most of them that they've never known, right? Like this refer a student piece, Cheryl can gather you all the names and email addresses and Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And you say, if you come by this coffee house from 1 to 4 on Tuesdays, I will buy you coffee. And so again, it's something about being in their space and present on a regular basis. And so what we are finding is that virtual ministry, that the number one virtual ministry has not been group ministry, it's been pastoral care. One-to-one text message, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. If you do nothing else with the youth that you're connected to, that have gone off, spend 2 hours a week looking through their social media, because what you'll find is that there is often a lot that they'll say there that you can then text them or call them. They will never pick up your phone call, by the way. They just won't. But you can text them and say, hey, I see something's going on. Are you okay? Or a lot of them will share with you pastors and trusted adults and educators at congregations are often the people that are on the front lines of when a student is having a mental or an emotional crisis. And so if you notice anything different, it is absolutely okay to meddle. I say, I'm overstepping now, but I feel like something's not going on. What's going on? Or I feel like something's not right. So that was a very long answer to your question, Ken, but.
No, I appreciate that. And I believe that there are some things that we have had in place in the past in the presbytery that have really, I think, worked and could launch into something that was even better. Unfortunately, the pandemic has kind of slowed us. And I'm kind of charged with kind of leading forward or trying to start that group and that part again. I like some of the things that I'm hearing that you're talking about, being present and things like that, and wondering how I could incorporate that into my my purview, what I do. I've already done a kind of a youth leader coffee hour in our area, and I think one of your comments, the pastoral care, something that came up in a group I'm involved with, and starting to make me connect the dots, I think too, where I think that maybe I need to reach out a little more and care and concern of our youth leaders in the area, and maybe connecting them in a way that maybe connects me to their youth, or as you said, maybe even having office hours at a coffee hour that I could buy youth coffee would be a great idea. Problem is our presbytery is very spread out, so it would be meeting here and there, and I could see where that could become a full-time job just to go get coffee, which Cheryl, if we can find it in the budget, I would definitely volunteer to take on that mission. I love coffee, but so yeah, you give me a lot of ideas, and I so much appreciate everything that you've shared. I really have. I could ask you a million questions probably, but I don't.
We can continue the
email.
continue the conversation.
Yeah.
So one of the things that
Gini, can I interrupt 1 second?
Yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know, Ken Sparks is our recently hired coordinator for youth and collegiate ministries. He is working to reconstitute our Presbytery Youth Council. He's also coordinating the Montreat College Conference trip that's coming up in January that Gini has referenced. He'll be working on Triennium, which amazingly enough is coming up again. Seems like it hadn't been 3 years, but it's here again. And but Ken, do you want to throw your email, your youth at cfpresbytery.org in the chat in case folks want to contact you? So Jenny, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
I just
you're
want to
good.
make sure, because I'm not sure that everybody on the Zoom call here knows Ken yet. So
a couple of upcoming things that I'm going to put in the chat is British Hirams, who is one of our campus ministers at North Carolina Central University in North Carolina, clearly North Carolina Central, which is an HBCU, historically Black college and university. One of the things that she and I have really been praying about and thinking about over the last year is why are there not more official connections between congregations and presbyteries and HBCUs? And so we are having a nationwide conversation about what this can look like on October 21st. And so I'll send Cheryl that information. And so that's, kind of number one in that realm. Two, my email is ukirknational@gmail.com or gnorrislane@gmail.com. And I am available to consult. We're working with Presbytery of Wyoming. We're working with Grace Presbytery. We're working with a couple of other presbyteries to say, okay, like what does this need to look like? Not to say anything about the PCUSA necessarily, but the PCA, one of the things that's really interesting is when they officially became a denomination and in the 80s split off, their 3 pillars of church growth, one of them was collegiate ministry. In RUF, Reformed University Fellowship, they often have 3 paid staff for every RUF organization on every state campus. 3 full-time paid staff. So that's not to say that we can, as a church, do it with a lot of different models. But one of the things, just to be really frank, is that one of the things that there are congregations and presbyteries and communities asking is, how can we fund this and invest in our often using churches that close, or property that's sold, or something to at least say, okay, we have 5 years with a full-time person. And the last thing I'm going to say is start with your church kids first. So there's a Dayenu, which is in the Passover Haggadah, is a song. It would have been enough if God would have brought us out of Egypt and not done anything else. It would have been enough if God had just brought us across the Red Sea and not let us throughout the wilderness. It would have been enough. It would have been enough to make sure that your youth that go on feel like they are connected and connected to the wider beauty of the Presbyterian Church. And remember that there are students that desperately want to know and need to know that God loves them. And so it's a both and, but start where you are. So thank you all.
Ginny, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I think folks are going to agree that we have come away with a lot of things that we can chew on for who knows how long, and maybe some more talking that Ken and you and I might want to do at some point for Presbyterian and others who are interested in the collegiate aspect of things. So thank you all who have remained for Ginny's presentation as well. May God bless you as you go your separate ways, and you can go knowing that you have the love of God, the grace of Jesus Christ, and that stirring of the Holy Spirit, which I'm sure is happening right now, going with you as well.